Hello and welcome. So today's an exciting day because we are going to finish up finally this altered book keepsake journal. So if you have been following along, you'll be happy to know there's just this video, and then I'm going to do a flip through of the whole thing in the next one. So if you are just joining me for the first time, my name is Sherry. I am brand new to all this junk journaling, and I don't know how long I'll be able to say that. I started, I think in May, June, something like that, with learning some mixed media things. And then I started this channel in August, so that's how new I am. So I wanted to answer some questions that I had. One of them was someone wanted me to actually glue in a signature into the altered book so that they could see how all this actually works in real time. So I'm going to do that today. Other than that, I had pretty much finished the book up. I still have to fold a paper heart in the middle, and I had to do the inside cover and the outside cover, which I've now done. So I'm going to go over what I did with that today. So if you are just joining me for the first time, what I've been working on the last couple of projects are altered book keepsake journals. So I'm not calling it, it's a junk journal, I guess, sort of, but junk journals, you're kind of using recycled things and all kinds of stuff. This one I actually had done, and I did just a flip through. I'll put the link in the description so you can go take a look at this. But this is kind of where this started. I decided to do one that was more of a keepsake journal, that wasn't a place really to do a ton of daily journal writing, but it's more of, there's little booklets in here that are removable and little notepads and things you can just write bits here and there. And then I did the paper folded heart, which I've kind of done on a few things now. So I wanted to go ahead and do a tutorial of the ideas that went into this type of book. So that's the series that I'm just finishing up now. So I decided to do the same kind of book, but just with a different theme kind of in it. So today what I wanted to show you to get caught up is how to put this one signature in, and then what I did to finish up the cover. So I actually did another video that I haven't posted yet. It's up there, but it's private. So if anybody wants to actually see my experimentation video, you just ask and I'll maybe send you the link. So anyway, what I did was, I knew I had picked out this paper for the inside covers, and it's really bold. So I wanted something kind of simpler on the outside. When this book is sitting on a shelf, once it's full of all of its stuff and has the heart folded, it's going to look really pretty just to leave it open. It's going to be much more open than this and just sit on a shelf. So the back cover is, not the most important thing, but I still want it to look finished. So I decided I wanted to do kind of a grungy, the paper pack I used kind of had a vintagey, mixed media kind of vintage feel. And so I wanted to kind of keep that for the outside of the book too. So I started with doing some experiments and ended up not kind of simplifying what I had done. And I just love it. It's very grungy. It looks like an old book. It feels good. It feels like an old book, but it's all done brand new. So what I did to start was I took all the stuff, all the little pockets and booklets and things. I took all those out because I wanted to be able to protect the inside as much as I could. So I ended up kind of just splitting the book in half, and then I wrapped all this with paper towel and blue painter's tape just to protect it. And I had not put this paper in yet. So I just wanted to I knew I was going to be working with a lot of water, and I just didn't want to mess up the inside of the book. Normally I would do the outside cover first, but in this case I just didn't know what I wanted to do when I started. So once I had this protected, I decided I wanted to kind of have a blank slate. So the first thing I did, I don't know if you remember seeing this at all in previous videos, but this book cover started falling apart, and it was an old Reader's Digest book. So I ended up having to use a lot of black bookbinding tape to kind of repair the spine. Having done that, I had black and I had ripped up cover, and it was kind of a mess. So I decided to start with a blank slate by just doing some acrylic gesso on it, just to give me kind of just a white background. And I just used this Liquitex acrylic gesso. So I think I did 1 or 2 coats of that. And then I decided I really wanted kind of the texture of an old, really old book. And you know, some of them have that kind of cloth feel. So I decided to do a sample board, and I wanted to try putting Scrim over it. It's such a thin, lightweight fabric that I knew it would just almost disappear into the book cover and not be bulky at all. And I like that. I just really was looking for the texture. So on my sample board, I kind of did the same thing. I just took a piece of cardboard and did the gesso on it. And then I just used my Mod Podge and put the Scrim over the whole thing. Then I wasn't sure what I wanted to do on the cover, so I had an idea to maybe do some Crackle paste with some stenciling, just to kind of give it a little design. And I ended up not liking that, even though the butterflies were kind of to the theme. This actually is almost identical to the pattern that I was going to use here, but I really didn't want it that busy, and decided this all looked too modern for the vintage look that the inside of my book is. So I decided not to do that. I went ahead and I did the Scrim, and then I just decided to do all of my grunginess. So I went ahead and the first thing I did was I just put some water on it with my spray bottle, just to kind of wet it down a little bit, because I wanted all my inks and things to kind of just run everywhere. And I ended up using my Distress Spray Stain in Vintage Photo, and then I used a little bit of Walnut stain, and I think some of this gray over here actually was some of the Hickory Smoke Distress Oxide spray, and I just did a tiny bit there. So I kind of did that as a background first, and then I also ended up adding some Vintage Photo in the Distress Oxide spray and also the Walnut stain. And when I say that, I mean just little squirts. Use a lot of water, move it around. I even used my little card to kind of spread it out. And then this kind of pasty stuff that you see here, this more white, lighter color, I actually used a different texture Crackle paste than I had used in my sample board. I ended up using this Ranger Distress texture paste in the Crackle, and it cures faster than the one that I was originally trying. If you end up wanting to watch that other video, it was Golden. It was the brand of Crackle medium that I used. So I really liked this one for doing as little as I wanted to on here. I think another option that I would have liked if I had colored this, because it's very white, and that's why I had these kind of lighter spots, and I think I would have liked those to be darker. My solution for it was to go ahead and add just some more inking on it. The other little bit, you'll see how there's a little bit of pink. I wanted just a tiny bit of that, but I don't have a lot of pink in my supplies because I'm just not a huge pink person. I did have some Distress Oxide spray in Picked Raspberry, and just a teeny tiny bit of that. And then just watering it down and kind of making a mess of everything. There is a little stamping you can see in the background, and I actually had more of that, but I ended up going over it so much with the different inks that ended up getting all covered up. But I actually had some text stamping here, and I still like that, because once you see the paper on the inside of this book, the mixed media style of paper had some of those postal stamps and, you know, music print and that kind of thing in here. So I just kind of wanted to do a little bit of nod to that, but keep it all very much in the background. So you can see it just kind of has an old crackly look. I even took and sanded that down a little bit afterwards, because I just wanted it to be really nice to the touch. And you can see the texture of the Scrim and all the colors, but it's kind of all the colors in the papers inside the book. So I really like how that turned out. It's pretty grungy, but I really love that style. Then I had my plate. I had mentioned I wanted to put a plate on the front, and I ended up putting it on the spine. And I've been making, you'll see inside the book, lots of labels for all the little booklets and things. So I wanted to kind of do a nod to that. I didn't really want to put a title or anything on it. I just kind of wanted the idea of a label. So whoever ends up with this book, you could always put a little something there. So that's what I did for the outside. And then I had made the inside covers before. I think I showed that I had scored a couple of lines in there because there was kind of a jog in my seam here. And so I had done that on the front and the back. And even with that, I just felt like it was gonna maybe wanna come apart. So I went ahead and put a piece of decorative washi tape that I've glued in with Mod Podge underneath and on the top because I just wanted that extra little bit of sturdiness. Honestly, I think once it's open and sitting on a shelf, it's gonna be fine. And because it's not a book that you're gonna be writing in itself, everything that you'll write in actually comes out of the book. I wasn't, you know, I'm not horribly worried about that. It's not like it's gonna get a ton of wear and tear as you would in a journal that you are writing in every day. Okay, so that is the covers that I did. Now I wanna go ahead and put this, this signature in. And this is the one that I did with a removable little book. And I left the book in and I'm gonna leave it in because I ended up using this elastic cording for my in and out. And I have it tight enough that if I pull this book out, it's gonna tear this fold just because of the tension. And I want that tension on there because I want the book to, this book to be in there nice. So I'll take it out after so that you can kind of see what that looks like. But I guess I can take these guys out too. No need to get a mess here. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to want to do is I want to put some glue into this. Now my question that the person had, I can't remember who it was, I'm hoping you're watching, is if you can, how good you have to clean this trough out. And you can see that I have cleaned it out all the way to the glued in binding in the back. The first book that I had done, and I'll show you kind of what happens if you don't do that. This book was my first experiment doing this. And so I was afraid to take all of the paper out all the way to the binding, thinking that the book might fall apart. And so this one, I don't know if you can see that. There's like a gap here because there's little book page junk back there. So I basically couldn't get my signature in maybe as tight. From the book side of it, you can't really tell, you know, it's okay. I just know from here it might not look as pretty. So by the time I got to this last one, which is a very wide trough, I went ahead and cleaned it out completely and it worked out fine. Nothing fell apart. So that would be my recommendation now that I've kind of did baby steps to get to this point. It is kind of hard to get all the paper cleaned out that much. I use some little pliers, and I think I showed these before, but I'll show them again. They're from my jewelry tools. If you have been following along, you know I also make jewelry. You can just use needle nose pliers too, but this will help you. It's hard to get your fingers into that crack and get all the paper out. So I use these. These have a little curved nose, which really lets you get in there and just clean all of that out. So I think that's kind of the best way to go, just to don't be afraid. So I have multiple pages glued together on either side, so they're pretty sturdy. So I have a nice base that I'm gonna attach the next one to. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm gonna use this Aleene's mixed media adhesive. You can also use E6000 would work. It's a similar kind of thing. And it was funny because I've mentioned this before, but I had never actually read the directions because it says waterproof, dries in minutes. So that's why I decided to use it instead of the E6000 because it sets up faster in my mind. So when I read the instructions though today, because I used it to glue this on, you actually are supposed to put it on both sides and then let it sit for maybe 2 minutes before you try to put them together. Kind of like rubber cement, how that works. And it's very similar to that kind of thing. So I haven't done that in the past and it's worked fine, but I'm gonna go ahead and put a generous amount here in this trough. I'm not gonna go all the way to the end because someone's gonna squeeze out and I don't wanna have a big mess. So I'm just gonna put that in there. And then if I did what they said, I'd put a little bit, I think, on the other side, but I think I'm just gonna make sure I'm in the right direction. That would be bad. And I have my, my elastic. I went ahead and put the knot in here. In fact, I don't need that to be that long, on the inside so that that can get glued in there too. So normally I think I would supposed to be put some on here, but I think I'm just gonna get some from what I put in this trough. And now I have it on both parts. So I can kind of let that sit for a second, I guess, but I just go in and just hold that. Make sure I have it's the right direction. I might dry fit because I have, I've inked, as you can see, the whole inside and the outside of the pages that are gonna get glued together so that there's no white showing. But I can kind of dry fit just to make sure I have this direction right. And on this side, so that I'm all kind of lined up, and that looks good. So I'm just gonna hold this here for a minute or so. So it's kind of fun to be finishing up another project. I always like to finish them so that I can get on to the next one. I tend to start in my head working on the next one before I get a little ahead of myself. So my next project, in fact, I've already put 2 videos up for it because I've started it, is the challenge where I wanted to challenge myself to use only the recycled book pages from these last couple of altered books that I've done. You end up tearing out a lot of paper. So my pile was getting pretty tall. So I decided to do a challenge. And so I ended up, the first video I think is just kind of explaining, introducing my idea, and then just some different kind of creative ideas that what might go into that book, just to get everybody else thinking about how to recycle things. Because I'm gonna do it where I can use anything that's recycled. I can also, you know, manipulate the paper however I want using new things. So like I'm doing some slow stitching on, you know, using thread and paint and that kind of stuff. So you can use other things, but for paper, I didn't want to allow myself to use a printed paper pack or a digiprints or anything like that. So the only paper I'm going to let myself use is the book page paper. If I make paper from book page, then I can use that too. But that kind of thing. So I ended up doing a second video because someone else asked me to do a tutorial about the stacked envelope junk journals. So I did that using just the book page. And so that's actually what I'm gonna finish up for this tutorial, I think. So I'm talking through this, I know, just because I want to let this sit up for a little bit before I continue. So I think that's probably okay enough. That's why I don't always do real, you know, tutorials where I'm really doing the whole thing, because I'm not very fast, and I don't want you to have to sit and wait like this. But I did promise to do this, so here we go. Okay, so that's kind of in there, but see, it's gonna wanna come out. So I'm just gonna kind of hold that and start gluing the pages together. And then that over the next 24 hours will set up and it'll be fine. Once I get the other sides glued in, then I think it'll help too. So I had that center section kind of sitting in the seam. And then I'm just gonna start with my Mod Podge, gluing down the rest. And I kind of do it a section at a time, mostly because I want to make sure everything's lined up. These pages are pretty thick. Let's see. See, I'm still sliding around here. I'm not the fastest and I'm not the neatest, so You'll see though that with the finished product, you would never have known that, I guess, because you can always fix things. Okay, so I've got glue all the way around, all over that page. I don't know if I'm in the frame or not. Okay, and then I'm gonna use, where's my little card? Use my card to smooth out any bubbles and things. And then what I think is really important, my most important thing, I use these all the time, are these bulldog clips. You've seen me do this before. I just butt them right next to each other and clip all the way around the edges. Making sure everything's kind of lined up. That's why it's a good idea to do the inking on both sides, because that way anything that doesn't line up exactly and shows, you'll already have it inked. I just keep checking to make sure that seam is down the center there. And you can use your little card, to kind of push. My Mod Podge dries pretty fast because I'm in a drier climate. And I actually have mentioned this recently too, is that someone let me know that they don't use Mod Podge because they live in a humid climate. So they use something called Collage Podge. And then I didn't know where you got it, but somebody else then commented me Hobby Lobby. So I've only been to a Hobby Lobby once because I live in a community that really doesn't have a lot of shopping and I have to go out of town. So okay, so I'm going to let those sit just a minute and work on the other side. So I'm just going to glue that up. And then clip it. Make sure I'm all nice and lined up. It makes these signatures, it's almost like little book covers in between each one, which is kind of nice. And that's kind of what they're like. It's like little mini portfolios. You know, I like to do the little pull-outs and notepads, and partly because they're fun to make. And it's just kind of a little bit different. You know, there's probably other people out there that do something similar, but I don't do a lot of video watching. I like to just try to come up with stuff. And if you do this, you know how time consuming it is. So I end up not watching a ton. But I do have a few people I have subscribed to. I haven't watched them in a while. But I kind of started doing this originally to learn how to do mixed media. So most of the ones that I do are actually mixed media techniques. Okay, so I'm going to let that sit for a little bit. And you don't feel any bubbles or any, you know, it's so thick by the two pieces that I'm putting together that they actually really feel pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and take these off and see how we did. Looks good. This one does have a little bit of a bubble in it. It's really hard once you get so many things in here, you're not working against a flat surface. And sometimes I'll do, I don't have it here, but I'll put something in between so that you can kind of get some leverage on it. That's better. Okay, so that one feels pretty good. And take these off. Like I said, my glue dries pretty fast as far as getting those ends. They're pretty tight. That's why I like using these, because it's going to be tighter than just holding it with your fingers, and then you can you get it all held down at the same time instead of, trying to do it with your hands. And that's pretty good. So if you do end up with any little gaps that didn't stick, which these all look pretty good, and that in the center you can see, I don't know if you can see that, they bump right into the spine. So it's just nice and clean. I have 2 of those larger sections in there. And then this one's a smaller one, but you can see for those larger ones, cleaning them out all the way just makes it look a little more finished, I think. So over the next 24 hours, then that will be completely set up inside that trough. Okay, so that is that. I think I am finished with showing you everything that I have done in here. I'm gonna go ahead and end this one and go ahead and fold my heart. Maybe I'll show you a little bit of that. Why don't I do that? I'm gonna show you how to start the heart. I won't do the whole thing because it'll take too long, but I'll show you, and then I'll put the link to the pattern for the heart. I got that off of an Etsy shop, and so you can purchase that there. And then once I have that finished, I'll come back and I'll do a whole flip through. So the pattern that I got, it's just a basic heart shape, and it comes with instructions on how to calculate and all that. And then each page where you make your fold marks. So I don't know how anyone comes up with these, because it just seems complicated to me, but I love that you can buy the patterns, and there's some amazing complicated patterns out there, but this one was just a nice simple one for me. So you basically are going to start at the beginning. I had sectioned off knowing I wanted my heart in the middle of the book. In the other one, I put it in the front of the book. I had to section off the number of pages that I was going to need to make that heart. So I did that, and I've just kind of kept them clipped off all this time so I wouldn't accidentally tear them out or use them. So on the instructions, it'll just tell you fold number 1, and then mark number 1 and mark number 2. So that's going to be just this first page is the fold number 1. So in my case, it is in centimeters. So I have a little metal centimeter ruler here, and I'm going to just kind of line it up with the top edge of my book and take a pencil. And my first one is 8.4. So I'm just going to go 8. There's 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh no, 8.4. See, I haven't done this in a while now. I have to remember how to do this. 8.4 and then 9.2. Well, let's just see. 8.4. Let's see. Oh, that's what it is. Okay. Took me a second in my brain here. So I'm going to go to 8 and then 4. 1, 2, 3. My mark's there. Okay, I had to think about that for a second. And then 9, 2. So here's the 9 and then 2 more. And make a mark. Okay, and then you would go to the next page. And the next one is 7, 7, and 9, 9. So I'm going to go here to 7, 7, and 9, 9. Okay, so you do that for the whole thing. In this case, there are 67 of those I have to do. So I have my first 2 marks that are close together, and these 2 are a little farther apart. That's be what makes your pattern when you fold them. So I'm gonna go to my first one here, and I'm just gonna fold it over at that mark. And having it on book page is kind of nice because my words, I can kind of line them up. It's mostly important what it's going to be on the edge. So again, I'm going to do the bottom fold. So that's my first fold. And then I'm going to do my next one. So what I usually do is, you know, do a few, ticking them off of my list as I go. I'll just make a little mark that I've done that one so I keep track. And then I'll fold some. And I think in the other book, I'll have to look and see if I did. I think I actually used a glue stick. I did. After the fact, I went ahead and used a glue stick and glued those flaps down. You don't have to do that. I've done other books where I didn't. And then I just used my ink. In this case, I used the peacock feathers, and I just inked the front edge of the page so that the color of your heart stands out. You don't have to do that either. You can just leave it book page, but I kind of like highlighting it with the color. So I'm not sure what color I'll do with this one, but I've got all these pages I need to fold and glue them down and all of that. But in the end, it's going to be a heart. So I'm going to go ahead and finish that part up, and then I will do a flip through. So have a great rest of your day and go make something. Bye.